The emergency beacon screamed across the void, its digital cry piercing through the cosmic silence like a death rattle. On observation deck 7 of the Galactic Archive Station, Keeper Zexhai watched the holographic display with 3 of her 4 eyes, while the 4th monitored the incoming data streams. The blue-scaled Arxian had witnessed this scene countless times before. Always the same pattern, always the same tragic end. Another young species approaches the threshold, she whispered to her assistant Kolthara, whose tentacles flickered with nervous bioluminescence. The humans of Sol 3, they've just achieved faster-than-light travel. The hologram showed a small, primitive vessel limping through space, its hull scarred by some recent battle. Inside, Zexhai could see the crew, bipedal mammals with pale pink skin and desperate eyes. Their captain, a female with short brown hair, was shouting orders that the Archive's universal translator converted to their database language. Engine. Core is failing, Sarah. How long until complete shutdown? Maybe 20 minutes, Captain Chen. The jump drive is completely fried. Then we broadcast everything we know. Maybe someone out there will listen. Zexhai's heart sank. Always the same words. Always the same hope. For 10 million years she had watched species after species reach this moment. Their first encounter with the Devourers, followed by desperate pleas to an uncaring galaxy. And always the same result. Should I initialize the memorial protocols? Asked Kolthara, his voice barely a whisper. Not yet, Zexhai replied, though she knew it was pointless. Let them have their moment of hope. On the display, Captain Chen activated her ship's communication array. Her voice carried across the frequencies, raw with determination despite her obvious fear. This is Captain Maria Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus. If anyone can hear this, humanity needs help. We've encountered a hostile force, machines that consume everything in their path. They've already taken Mars Colony and Titan Station. We tried to fight them, but they're unlike anything we've ever seen. The transmission grew weaker as the ship's power systems began failing. Chen's image flickered, but her voice remained steady. We're transmitting all our tactical data, our weapon specifications, everything we learned about these creatures. Earth has maybe 6 months before they arrive at our homeworld. 4 billion people are counting on. The transmission cut to static. Zexhai closed all 4 eyes and began the ritual she had performed 734 times before. She opened the Archive's memorial section and created a new entry. Humanity of Sol 3 extinct. Standard Devourer pattern. Duration of civilization, 12,000 years. Duration of spacefaring existence, 127 years. Duration of resistance against Devourers, 73 days. But as her claws moved over the control interface, something made her pause. She reopened the human transmission and studied it more carefully. There was something different about the data they had sent, something that didn't match the usual pattern of desperate, futile resistance. Kolthara, she said slowly, analyze the human tactical data, cross-reference it with previous species encounters with the Devourers. Her assistant's tentacles moved in complex patterns over his workstation. After several minutes, he looked up with surprise written in the color patterns across his skin. Keeper Zexhai, this is extraordinary. The humans didn't just fight the Devourers, they actually damaged them. According to this data, they destroyed 17 Devourer vessels and disabled 43 more. Zexhai felt a chill run through her scales. In 10 million years of galactic history, no species had ever damaged a Devourer vessel. The machines were considered indestructible, unstoppable forces of nature that swept through the galaxy every 50,000 years, consuming all organic life before returning to their mysterious origin point. That's impossible, she breathed. Run the analysis again. I've run it 3 times, Keeper. The data is consistent. The humans used a combination of nuclear weapons and something they call kinetic bombardment, essentially throwing large objects at near-light speed. But more than that, they seemed to learn from each encounter. Their tactics evolved rapidly during the 73 days of conflict. Zexhai stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. For the first time in millennia, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Prepare an emergency message to the Galactic Council, she ordered, and send a deep space probe to the Sol system immediately. But Keeper, the humans are surely extinct by now. The pattern is always the pattern, Zexai interrupted, may finally be broken. As her assistant scrambled to follow her orders, Zexai stared at the star charts showing the location of Sol 3. Somewhere out there, around an unremarkable yellow star, a species might have done the impossible. The question was, had they survived long enough to do it again? The deep space probe would take 6 months to reach the Sol system. 6 months to discover if the galaxy's 10-million-year nightmare was finally coming to an end, or if humanity had simply managed to die fighting harder than anyone before them. Either way, Zexai knew that everything was about to change. Chapter 2. The Impossibility Protocols. 6 months and 4 days after launching the probe, Keeper Zexai received the transmission that shattered everything she thought she knew about the universe. Keeper. Kolthara's voice was tight with disbelief. You need to see this immediately. The main display showed real-time footage from their probe as it approached the Sol system. What Zexai saw defied every law of galactic history. Where there should have been the familiar debris field of a consumed civilization, she instead saw construction. Massive orbital installations ringed every planet and major asteroid. Ships, clearly human in design but far more advanced than anything in their original transmissions, moved in organized formations between the celestial bodies. And most shocking of all, scattered throughout the system, were the twisted dark hulks of devourer vessels, dead devourer vessels. This is impossible, Zexai whispered. The probe data must be corrupted. I've verified it 17 times, Kolthara replied, his bioluminescent pattern cycling through colors she had never seen before. The humans not only survived the devourer attack, they won. Before Zexai could respond, their probe was intercepted by a sleek human vessel. The communication that followed was in perfect galactic standard, indicating the humans had somehow decoded their language protocols. Unknown probe, this is Admiral Sarah Kim of the Terran Defense Force. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Zexai recognized the voice. It was the same Sarah from Captain Chen's original transmission, though 6 months in a war had changed her from a frightened engineer to someone who spoke with absolute authority. This is Keeper Zexai of the Galactic Archive, she responded. We received your distress call 6 months ago. We came to document your civilization's final moments, as is our duty. There was a long pause before Admiral Kim responded, and when she did, there was something like dark amusement in her voice. Our final moments? Keeper, I think you might want to update your files. We'd like to invite you to Earth for a proper briefing. There are some things about humanity you need to understand. 2 days later, Zexai found herself in the most surreal situation of her long life. She stood in the ruins of New Geneva, which had been rebuilt around the massive carcass of a devourer harvester, a creature so large that human children now played in parks built inside its hollowed-out shell. Admiral Kim, a woman with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, walked alongside her through the Memorial District. The first wave hit us exactly as your database predicted, Kim explained, gesturing to a monument made from fused devourer metal. 17 harvester ships, each the size of Manhattan. They destroyed Mars colony in 4 hours. But your species should have been extinct within days, Zexai protested. The devourers have never been defeated, never even slowed down. Kim stopped walking and turned to face her directly. Keeper, may I ask you something? In all your records of species facing the devourers, did any of them have one particular trait that humans possess? What trait? We're insane. Zexai's translator struggled with the word. I don't understand. Kim smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both warm and terrifying. Every other species in your database, when faced with overwhelming odds, did the logical thing. They tried to flee, hide, or negotiate. They fought defensive battles, tried to preserve their populations, acted rationally. She pointed to a nearby display showing battle footage, human ships ramming directly into devourer vessels, exploding, in brilliant fireballs that somehow damaged the supposedly indestructible machines. Humans, Kim continued, when faced with extinction, don't act rationally. We get angry, we get creative, and we absolutely refuse to go quietly. Zexhai watched, the footage in fascination and horror. But the cost? 3 billion dead in the first month, Kim said matter-of-factly. But that left 1 billion very, very angry humans who had nothing left to lose. They walked deeper into the memorial district where Zexhai saw something that made her fourth heart skip a beat, a massive factory complex built around and into another dead devourer, this one clearly being used to produce something. What is that facility manufacturing? She asked. Kim's smile grew wider and considerably more frightening. Keeper Zexhai, let me introduce you to humanity's gift to the galaxy. We call it the Impossibility Protocol. As they approached the factory, Zexhai could see through the transparent walls. Inside, humans in environmental suits were dissecting devourer technology with tools that shouldn't have been able to cut the alien metal. More disturbing still, she could see assembly lines where human technology was being merged with devourer components. You're reverse engineering their technology? Oh, we're doing much more than that, Kim replied. We're improving it. They entered the facility through an airlock, and Zexhai found herself face-to-face with Captain Maria Chen, the same woman who had sent the desperate distress call 6 months earlier. Chen looked older, scarred, but very much alive. Keeper Zexhai. Chen greeted her with a nod. Welcome to Project Chimera. I understand you have some questions about how we're still breathing. Your entire species was supposed to be extinct, Zexhai said bluntly. Chen laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, we get that a lot. Turns out being supposed to be extinct and actually being extinct are two very different things. She led them to an observation window overlooking the main assembly floor. Below, Zexhai watched as humans fitted Devourer propulsion systems to human-designed weapon platforms, creating hybrid vessels that hurt her eyes to look at. The thing about Devourers, Chen explained, is that they're perfectly designed to consume organic civilizations that follow predictable patterns. They expect fear, desperation, and logical tactical decisions. What they don't expect is a species that looks at an unstoppable force of nature and says, "Hold my beer." Hold your beer? Zexhai's translator was struggling again. Human expression. Admiral Kim interjected. It means, watch this, I'm about to do something incredibly stupid that might just work. Chen nodded toward the assembly floor. Those ships down there? They're equipped with Devourer shields, Devourer weapons, and Devourer FTL drives. But they're controlled by human tactical AI and crewed by humans who've spent the last 6 months learning to think like the monsters that tried to eat us. Zexhai felt all 4 of her hearts racing. What are you planning to do with them? The 2 human women exchanged a look that made Zexhai's scales ripple with unease. Keeper, Admiral Kim said softly. In your database, what happens after the Devourers finish consuming a species? They return to their origin point in the galactic core and enter hibernation for 50,000 years before beginning the next cycle. And in all your 10 million years of observation, has any species ever followed them home? Zexhai's mouth fell open as the implications hit her. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Chen replied. The Devourers wanted to hunt us to extinction. Fine, but they made one critical error in judgment. What error? Both women smiled with the same terrifying expression Zexhai was beginning to recognize as uniquely human. They taught us how to hunt them back. Chapter 3. The Hunt Begins. 3 months after Keeper Zexhai's arrival on Earth, she found herself aboard the TDF Retribution, humanity's first Devourer hybrid battleship, as it prepared to do something no species in galactic history had ever attempted: track the Devourers to their source. The ship itself was a testament to human ingenuity and stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. Its hull was forged from processed Devourer armor. Its weapons were reversed-engineered Devourer energy cannons, and its faster-than-light drive was a hybrid system that shouldn't have worked according to every law of physics Zexhai knew. Captain, Chen, now promoted to fleet commander, stood on the bridge studying star charts while Admiral Kim coordinated with the other ships in their small fleet. Zexai watched from her position as Galactic Observer, a role she had never expected to fill. "Keeper," Chen called to her. "You've been unusually quiet. Having second thoughts about coming along?" Zexai flexed her claws nervously. "In 10 million years, no species has ever attempted what you're doing. The Devourers are considered a force of nature, like gravity or stellar collapse. You don't hunt forces of nature." "Says who?" This came from Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the ship's tactical officer, a young human whose left arm had been replaced with Devourer biotech after the battle for Luna Colony. 6 months ago, everyone said you couldn't kill a Devourer either. "That was different," Zexai protested. "You were defending your homeworld. You had desperation and now we have something better," Chen interrupted. "We have experience, anger, and absolutely nothing to lose. The Devourers killed 3 billion of us, Keeper. They turned our homeworld into a battlefield and our children into refugees. They made it personal." Admiral Kim looked up from her coordination display. "Track analysis complete, Maria. The Devourer fleet's course is confirmed. They're heading for the Galactic core, exactly as Keeper Zexai's records predicted. Time to intercept?" 18 days at maximum hybrid drive. Chen nodded and turned to the ship's communication officer. "Signal the fleet. Operation Impossible is a go." As the Retribution and its 5 sister ships engaged their hybrid drives, Zexai experienced something she had never felt before: hope mixed with absolute terror. Through the observation windows, she watched space bend around them in ways that her instruments insisted couldn't happen. "Commander Chen," she said carefully, "what exactly is your plan when we catch up to them?" Chen's smile was becoming disturbingly familiar. "We're going to ask them some questions." Questions. Like why they've been systematically exterminating every intelligent species in the galaxy for 10 million years. Like where they come from. Like what gives them the right to decide who lives and dies. Lieutenant Webb looked up from his tactical display. "And if they don't feel like answering? Then we'll make them wish they had." The journey to the galactic core took them through regions of space no human had ever seen. Ancient star systems, some containing the ruins of civilizations that had been consumed millennia ago. Zexai found herself serving as a guide through this graveyard of worlds, pointing out the remnants of species whose names had been lost to time. The Veltar controlled 17 systems, she explained as they passed through one particularly dense debris field. They were master engineers. Their cities floated in gas-giant atmospheres. The Devourers consumed their entire civilization in 6 days. What was their primary mistake? Chen asked, studying the tactical analysis on her display. Mistake? Zexai was confused by the question. Every species that gets wiped out makes a critical tactical error. With humanity, we almost made the mistake of trying to fight the Devourers conventionally. What did the Veltar do wrong? Zexai accessed her memory files. They attempted to negotiate. They believed the Devourers were intelligent beings who could be reasoned with. There's your answer, Lieutenant Webb said grimly. They assumed their enemies thought like they did. What makes you so certain the Devourers can't be reasoned with? Zexai asked. Chen's expression grew cold. Because we tried, Keeper. During the first week of their attack, we sent 17 different diplomatic overtures. We offered them resources, technology, even uninhabited systems to consume. Want to know what their response was? What? They targeted our hospitals and schools first. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of hybrid systems. Zexai felt something she had never experienced before, the desire for revenge. On the 15th day of their journey, they caught their first glimpse of the Devourer fleet. Long-range sensors detected 47 massive vessels moving in perfect formation toward a region of space that, according to all known star charts, should have been empty. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, I'm reading something impossible. There's a structure at their destination coordinates. Define structure, Kim replied. Ma'am, it's larger than most solar systems. The main display activated. showing long-range imaging of what they were approaching. Zexai's four hearts stopped beating simultaneously. Floating in the void was a construct that defied description, a vast network of geometric shapes and organic curves that seemed to bend space around itself. "Keeper?" Chen said quietly. "Is this structure in any of your archives?" "No," Zexai whispered. "Nothing like this has ever been recorded. It's beautiful." "It's also heavily armed," Lieutenant Webb reported. "I'm reading energy signatures that make our hybrid weapons look like toys." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display with professional calm. "Well, that explains where the Devourers come from. The question is who built it." As if in response to her question, the communications array activated. A voice, or something like a voice, filled the bridge. It spoke in harmonics that bypassed their universal translators and somehow communicated meaning directly to their minds. "Young species of Sol 3. You should not have come here." Commander Chen stepped forward, her hand moving instinctively to her sidearm. "Identify yourself." "We are the architects. We created the harvesters you call devourers. We did not expect any organic species to survive their culling, much less to follow them home." "Culling?" Zexai's voice was barely a whisper. "You've been deliberately exterminating civilizations?" "For 10 million years, yes. It is necessary." Chen's face went pale with rage. "Necessary? You murdered billions of beings. You destroyed entire species. How is that necessary?" There was a pause that seemed to stretch for eternity before the architects responded. "Because, young ones, something far worse than our harvesters is coming, and we have been preparing the galaxy for war." The revelation hit the bridge like a physical blow. Zexai felt her worldview crumbling around her as the implications became clear. What could possibly be worse than the Devourers, she asked. The response chilled her to her core. Those who created us. Chapter 4. The True Enemy. The silence on the bridge of the Retribution stretched like a held breath as the implications of the architect's words sank in. Commander Chen was the first to recover, her military training overriding the shock. "Explain," she demanded. "Now." The harmonics that served as the architect's voice grew more complex, carrying undertones of something that might have been regret. "Your species has impressed us, humans of Sol 3. In 10 million years you are the first to not only resist our harvesters, but to trace them to their source. Perhaps it is time for truth." The main display shimmered and changed, showing not the massive construct ahead of them but images of space itself, but wrong somehow, twisted in ways that hurt to perceive directly. Beyond your galaxy, beyond the visible universe your instruments can detect, exist the Primarchs. They are to us what we are to you, beings of such power and malevolence that their very presence corrupts reality itself. Zexai's scales rippled with involuntary fear patterns. What do they want? To unmake everything. Every star, every world, every conscious thought that has ever existed. They view consciousness itself as an aberration that must be corrected. Admiral Kim stepped forward, studying the display with tactical precision. "And you've been killing entire civilizations to prepare for them? That makes no sense." "Does it not?" The architect's tone carried something like bitter amusement. "Tell us, Admiral Kim, what happens when an organic civilization reaches sufficient technological development?" Kim frowned, considering. "They explore, expand, seek out other forms of life." "Precisely. They create signals, broadcasts, beacons of consciousness that spread across the cosmos like ripples in a pond. The Primarchs follow those ripples. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the brighter it shines in dimensions you cannot perceive." Commander Chen's face went white as understanding dawned. "You've been keeping the galaxy dark, preventing civilizations from advancing too far. The harvesters consume only those species that approach the threshold of detection. It is selective extinction." The galaxy appears empty to the Primarch's senses, and they pass by in search of brighter prey. Lieutenant Webb looked up from his tactical station, his expression grim. Then we just painted a massive target on the entire galaxy. Our hybrid technology, our victory over the Devourers, has created a beacon of consciousness unlike anything seen in 10 million years, the architects confirmed. The Primarchs will be here within 50 of your years. The weight of cosmic responsibility settled on the bridge like a physical presence. Zexhai felt her legs give out, and she sank into her observer's chair, overwhelmed by the revelation that humanity had doomed not just their own galaxy, but potentially countless others. But Chen's reaction was entirely different. She began to laugh. "Commander?" Admiral Kim looked concerned. "Are you all right? Don't you see?" Chen wiped tears from her eyes, still chuckling. "We've been thinking about this all wrong. The architects have been playing defense for 10 million years, culling civilizations to hide from the big bad monsters, but humans don't play defense." "What are you suggesting?" the architects asked, their harmonics taking on a distinctly wary tone. Chen turned to address the vast construct directly. "I'm suggesting you've been fighting the wrong war. You've been trying to hide from the Primarchs instead of preparing to kick their asses. The Primarchs cannot be defeated. They are—" Yeah, unstoppable forces of cosmic horror," Chen interrupted. "That's what everyone said about your Devourers, too. Look how that worked out." Zexhai stared at the human commander in disbelief. "Chen, you can't be serious. These beings destroy entire galaxies. So did the Devourers on a smaller scale. The principle is the same. Find the enemy's weakness and exploit it." Chen began pacing the bridge, her tactical mind clearly racing. "Architects, in your 10 million years of preparation, have you ever actually fought the Primarchs directly? Direct confrontation would be inadvisable." "That's not what I asked. Have you fought them?" A long pause. "No." "Then how do you know they can't be defeated?" The display shifted again, showing images of destroyed galaxies, spiral arms torn apart, stars extinguished, entire regions of space rendered empty and cold. "This is what they leave behind," the architect said. "Entire galactic clusters, devoured and processed into raw energy for their consumption." Admiral Kim studied the images with professional interest. "These galaxies, were they defended? Did the civilizations there fight back? The records are incomplete." "Incomplete how?" Another pause, longer this time. "The consumed galaxies left no survivors to provide tactical data." Chen stopped pacing and turned to face her senior staff. "People, I think we've been handed the BA opportunity of several lifetimes. The architects have been playing not to lose for 10 million years. What do you say we show them how to play to win?" Lieutenant Webb's cybernetic arm whirred as he accessed his tactical database. "Commander, if we're seriously considering this, we'll need more than 6 hybrid ships and a good attitude." "Agreed. Architects, what resources can you bring to bear?" "Our harvesters number in the millions. Our industrial capacity spans 17 star systems. Our knowledge of physics and engineering far surpasses any organic species we have encountered. And yet you've never used any of that to actually fight the Primarchs," Chen pointed out. "You've been saving it all for a defensive action that will never come because running and hiding only works until someone faster finds you." Zexhai found her voice again. "What are you proposing?" Chen's smile returned, the same terrifying expression that had become her trademark. "I'm proposing we do what humans do best. Take an impossible situation and make it everybody else's problem." She turned back to address the architects. "Here's the deal. You give us access to your resources, your knowledge, and your industrial capacity. In return, we'll teach you something your species has apparently never learned. What could you possibly teach beings who have existed for millions of years? How to fight dirty." The bridge fell silent as the implications of Chen's proposal sank in. They were talking about preparing for a war against beings that existed beyond normal understanding, using weapons and tactics that hadn't been invented, yet in a time frame that would require reshaping the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Admiral Kim was the first to speak. Maria, even if this is possible, and that's a massive if, we're talking about militarizing the entire galaxy. Every species, every world. Including the ones your harvesters have been preventing from advancing, Chen added, looking directly at the display representing the architects. You're going to have to stop the culling immediately and start helping civilizations reach their full potential. The risk is that 50 years from now we'll have a galaxy full of advanced, angry, and well-armed species ready to make the Primarchs wish they'd stayed home. The alternative is that 50 years from now there won't be a galaxy at all. Keeper Zexhai stood slowly, her four hearts beating in perfect synchronization for the first time in her life. Architects, if you agree to this alliance, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply resume the culling once the Primarch threat is dealt with? You have no guarantee, the architects replied. Just as we have no guarantee that your species won't turn the weapons we help you create against us once the greater threat is ended. Chen nodded approvingly. Good. Nobody trusts anybody completely, which means everybody has incentive to keep their word. That's a foundation we can build on. She moved to the communication console and activated the ship's recording system. This message is being broadcast to every human colony, every allied species, and every galactic archive station simultaneously. As of this moment, the war for the galaxy's survival has begun. Not the war we've been fighting, the war we're going to win. The message went out across space, carrying with it the impossible promise that had become humanity's signature. They would find a way to defeat the undefeatable, because the alternative was unacceptable. But as the retribution moved closer to the architect's construct, Zexhai couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to unleash something far more dangerous than the Primarchs themselves. Human ingenuity applied to cosmic-scale warfare. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had survived when everyone expected them to die. And this time, the lesson would be taught on a scale that would echo across the universe itself. Epilogue. The new cycle. 5 years after first contact with the architects, Keeper Zexhai stood in what had once been her quiet observation post aboard the Galactic Archive Station. Now it served as the central coordination hub for the most ambitious military project in galactic history, Project Defiance. The station itself had been transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been peaceful archives and meditation chambers, there were now tactical planning centers, weapons development labs, and communication arrays that linked every inhabited system in the galaxy. The silence she had cherished for millennia had been replaced by the constant hum of a civilization preparing for war. Through the main observation window, she could see humanity's latest contribution to the galactic defense, a massive shipyard, built around a captured Devourer vessel, where human engineers worked alongside architect technicians and representatives from 47 different species to create weapons that 5 years ago would have been considered fantasy. Keeper Zexhai. To Bridge 7, her communication implant chimed. Commander Chen is requesting your presence for the final briefing. She made her way through corridors that now bustled with activity. Arxian tactical specialists comparing notes with human strategists, Veltar engineers, the species had been resurrected using genetic archives, working on shield harmonics with architect energy form entities, and dozens of other species that should have been extinct but were instead contributing their unique knowledge to humanity's impossible war effort. In Conference Room Alpha, she found the core leadership of Project Defiance assembled around a holographic display of the galaxy. Commander Chen, now bearing the title of Supreme Galactic Coordinator, was pointing to sectors where new defensive installations were under construction. The Primarch approach vector has been confirmed, Chen was saying to the assembled representatives. They'll enter our galaxy through the Perseus arm, exactly as the architects predicted. Our deep space monitoring stations will give us approximately 18 months warning once they cross the galactic barrier. Admiral Kim, who now commanded the largest military fleet in galactic history, nodded toward the display. Defensive. Positions are optimal. Every major system has been fortified, every species has been armed and trained. If the Primarchs want our galaxy, they're going to have to earn it. An architect entity, one of the energy beings that served as their species. Ambassadors flickered with concerned harmonics. Supreme Coordinator, we must reiterate our concern about the psychological profiles of the resurrected species. Many harbor significant resentment toward us for their previous extinction. Chen's response was the same terrifying smile that had become famous across the galaxy. Good. Angry soldiers fight harder. Zexai took her seat at the observer's position she had occupied for so many years, though now it came with voting rights in galactic defense decisions. Commander, what's the status of the special projects? Project Lighthouse is ahead of schedule, Lieutenant Webb reported. His cybernetic enhancements had become more extensive over the years, incorporating technology from a dozen different species. The consciousness beacon is operational and has been tested at 1/10 power. When activated at full strength, it should be visible to the Primarchs from outside the local galactic cluster. And Project Mousetrap? The gravitational anomaly generators are in position throughout the Perseus arm. When the Primarchs arrive, they'll find that local spacetime doesn't behave quite the way they expect. Zexai's scales rippled with unease. I still don't understand the logic of making ourselves more visible to the enemy. Chen leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. Keeper, in all your records of the Primarchs' attacks, what's the one constant factor? They consume everything in their path with perfect efficiency. Exactly. They're used to easy victories against surprised, unprepared opponents. But humans learned a long time ago that the best way to defeat a superior enemy is to choose your battlefield. Admiral Kim activated a secondary display showing the elaborate network of defenses, weapons platforms, and mobile fleets now protecting the galaxy. We're not hiding from them, Keeper. We're inviting them to a fight. A fight against beings that have consumed entire galactic clusters, the architect entity pointed out. The risk remains enormous. So does the potential reward, Chen replied. If we win, and I mean when we win, we'll have proven that the Primarchs can be defeated. Every galaxy they've consumed, every civilization they've destroyed will be avenged. More importantly, every galaxy they haven't reached yet will have a chance to prepare their own defenses. Zexai accessed her personal files, reviewing the changes of the past 5 years. The galaxy's population had increased by 40%, as extinct species were resurrected and new colonies were established. Technological advancement had progressed at a rate that made her head spin. And most remarkably, the constant cycle of fear and extinction that had defined galactic history for 10 million years had been replaced by something she had never expected to see: hope. There's something else, Chen continued, and her expression grew more serious. Our deep space reconnaissance has detected something unexpected. The Primarchs aren't traveling alone. The display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the galaxy's edge. Alongside the massive reality-warping signatures that indicated Primarch vessels, there were smaller, more familiar energy patterns. Those are survivors, Admiral Kim explained. Refugee fleets from the galaxies the Primarchs have already consumed. It appears that not everyone dies when the Primarchs attack. Some manage to escape and follow them, looking for... She paused. Looking for revenge. How many? Zexai asked. Preliminary estimates suggest several million ships from at least a dozen different galactic civilizations. They've been following the Primarchs for centuries, possibly millennia, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. Chen stood and walked to the observation window, gazing out at the bustling shipyard where impossible technologies were becoming reality. Ladies, gentlemen, and energy beings, we're not just fighting for our own galaxy anymore. We're fighting for everyone the Primarchs have ever wronged. The room fell silent as the full scope of their undertaking became clear. They weren't just preparing to defend their home. They were about to become the rallying point for a cosmic rebellion that had been building for eons. Supreme Coordinator, the architect entity's harmonics carried a note of something that might have been admiration. Your species continues to exceed all predictions. We calculate a 23.7% probability of survival in direct confrontation with the Primarchs. Chen turned back with her characteristic grin. Architect, we've beaten worse odds than that. Besides, we're not planning a direct confrontation. What are You planning? We're going to teach the Primarchs the same lesson we taught your devourers. When you try to eat humanity, you don't get a meal. You get indigestion that lasts for geological ages. Lieutenant Webb looked up from his tactical projections. Commander, final systems check is complete. All defensive networks are online. All species are at battle readiness and our refugee allies are in position. The galaxy is as ready as it's ever going to be. Chen nodded and activated the general communication system that now linked every world in the galaxy. Her voice carried to billions of beings across thousands of star systems, each word carrying the weight of 10 million years of preparation. Citizens of the galaxy, this is Supreme Coordinator Chen. 47 years ago, my species sent out a desperate distress call. We were facing extinction and we thought we were alone. Today, I stand before you not as a human, but as a representative of the greatest alliance in galactic history. She paused, looking around the room at the faces and entities that had become her extended family through years of impossible challenges. The Primarchs are coming. They expect to find what they've always found, scattered, frightened civilizations that will fall before their advance like grain before the scythe. Instead, they're going to find something that has never existed before in the history of the universe, a galaxy that fights back. The communication array showed confirmation signals from across the galaxy, millions of worlds acknowledging her message, billions of beings preparing for the battle of their lives. Whatever happens in the coming years, remember this: we are not the victims of an inevitable cycle. We are not hiding in the shadows hoping to be overlooked. We are the children of a galaxy that has said no more to those who would dictate our fate. Chen's smile was visible in her voice as she delivered her final words to the galaxy. The Primarchs wanted to teach us about inevitability. Time to teach them about humanity. As the communication ended, Zexhai realized that her 10 million year vigil was finally over. She was no longer an observer recording the deaths of civilizations. She was a participant in their ultimate revenge. Outside the observation window, ships from 100 different worlds moved in perfect formation, carrying weapons that merged the science of dozens of species with the tactical ruthlessness that had become humanity's gift to the galaxy. The Primarchs had spent eons consuming civilizations one at a time. They were about to discover what happened when all those civilizations fought back as one. The galaxy watched them come, and this time, it was ready. Final entry, Galactic Archive, Personal. Log of Keeper Zexhai, recorded 53 years after first human contact. Today marks the 5th anniversary of what historians are calling the Primarch War's end, though end seems insufficient to describe what actually happened. The official records will show that the Primarchs were defeated through superior tactics, advanced technology, and galactic unity. But I was there, and I know the truth is far more complex. The Primarchs arrived exactly as predicted, their reality warping, vessels emerging from the void between galaxies like wounds in space itself. For the first time in their existence, they encountered not scattered, terrified prey, but a coordinated response from an entire galaxy that had spent decades preparing for their arrival. The battle lasted 3 years, not 3 days, as every previous Primarch conquest had taken. Not 3 weeks, as the most optimistic projections had suggested. 3 full years of cosmic warfare that redefined what was possible in the universe. The humans were right about choosing their battlefield. The Primarchs found themselves fighting not in empty space against helpless civilians, but in a carefully prepared killing field where every star system had been turned into a fortress. Every asteroid belt had been weaponized, and every planet held defenders who refused to surrender. But what truly changed the course of the war wasn't humanity's military genius or the architect's advanced technology. It was something no one had anticipated: the Primarchs' reaction to sustained resistance. They had never encountered prey that fought back effectively. In eons of galactic consumption, they had grown used to effortless victory. When they finally met an enemy that could hurt them, they made the same mistake that countless other unstoppable forces had made when facing humanity. They got angry, and angry beings make mistakes. Commander Chen, now remembered as the liberator of galaxies, exploited every single one of those mistakes. When the Primarchs adapted to our defensive strategies, she changed tactics. When they began targeting civilian populations, she made those populations mobile. When they tried to retreat and regroup, she followed them home. The final battle took place not in our galaxy but in theirs, a twisted realm beyond normal space where the Primarchs had built their empire on the bones of 1,000,000 conquered civilizations. The combined fleets of our galaxy, reinforced by the refugee survivors from dozens of consumed worlds, brought the war to the beings who had terrorized the universe for longer than recorded history. I will not detail the horrors we witnessed in that place or describe the weapons we were forced to use. Some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve. But I will record this. When the last Primarch stronghold fell, the silence that followed was not the silence of death, but of peace. The first true peace the universe had known in geological ages. The Primarchs were not destroyed. Humanity, in its infinite complexity, chose a different path. They were imprisoned, contained in a dimensional fold that will hold them until the heat death of the universe. Commander Chen's reasoning was characteristically simple. Genocide is what they did. We're better than that. Today, our galaxy is unrecognizable from the terrified, scattered collection of worlds it was 53 years ago. The archive no longer records the extinction of species. Instead, I catalog their achievements. Civilizations that should have been dead for millennia are building wonders that span star systems. Technologies that seemed impossible are becoming routine. And at the center of it all, humanity continues to do what it has always done. Prove that the impossible is just another problem waiting to be solved. But perhaps the most remarkable change is in myself. For 10 million years, I watched civilizations die and recorded their final moments with detached professionalism. I thought this was wisdom, this careful distance from the tragedies I witnessed. Humanity taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to watch quietly, while others suffer. Sometimes wisdom means picking up a weapon and standing between the monsters and those who cannot defend themselves. The galaxy no longer watches civilizations die. Instead, we watch them live, grow, and reach for possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. And if new monsters arise to threaten that future, they will find that the lesson of the Primarchs has been well learned. When you try to prey on a galaxy that has learned to fight back, you don't get a conquest. You get a revolution. End of record. Archive sealed by order of the Galactic Council. May this serve as testament to the species that shattered the cycle and taught the universe to hope. The end.